Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick update on my experience with the Sony Alpha A7. Now this is a full-frame mirrorless interchangeable lens camera priced at $1999.99 here in the States for the kit you're looking at right now, which includes a 28 to 70 millimeter FE lens. Now FE is for full-frame E-mount, and that's because this being the A7 and A7R, that both cameras are built around Sony's E-mount, which started out with the NEX lineup of cameras, which has now been rebranded under Alpha. So basically, everything interchangeable is now Alpha, everything point and shoot is Cybershot. That's the new structure of things. But that aside, this $2,000 camera gets you a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, basically the same one found in the flagship A99 from last year. If you step up from this model, which by the way can also be purchased body only for $16.99, you can step up to the A7R, which gives you a 36 megapixel sensor, but does lose the phase and contrast autofocus system that this camera has in favor of just contrast, but does, in terms of resolution, not only offer you a higher megapixel count, it also ditches the low pass filter, another attempt to really give you the most detail and highest resolution image you could possibly want, at least on the still side of things. Of course, some compromise when it comes to video. That's where the A7 is really for, a larger market than the R, where people are really looking to do incredibly large prints, because that's the only reason you could truly justify, at least for most customers, stepping up to that higher resolution sensor. With that said, the update today really wasn't to discuss the specifications and feature sets. Both cameras do have Wi-Fi, NFC, as well as application stores, weather sealing, incredible manual controls, one of the best grips I've ever seen on a mirrorless interchangeable lens camera system, let alone one that's full frame. Leica already does make full frame mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras, but nothing in this weight class. Sony has a lot of work to do with the lens lineup. This kit lens is one of the few affordable lenses that they can possibly offer, but right now it's only available with this kit. So really, if you're buying a body alone, be prepared to spend at least $800 for the 35 millimeter Zeiss and over $1,000 for anything else. Of course, you can use E-mount lenses. I've got a collection like many of you out there who are NEX owners. Unfortunately, they will be cropped. So you're not only going to get a different focal range because they were designed for aps-c, not full frame, but you're also going to get cropped 10 megapixels is what you're looking at for the cropped image that you'll get out of the A7. It's even worse, it's different, I should say, with the A7R. That out of the way, I wanted to show you some applications because this camera, even though it's got that Wi-Fi and NFC capability out of the box, Sony made it clear they were not going to have access to all of the applications that were available for the NEX lineup. And that was somewhat disappointing because this does embody, as well as the A7R, which is $23.99 on its own, if I didn't mention that earlier, a substantial, $22.99.99, substantial jump up from the A7 body alone, which is $16.99.99. And I don't think will be justifiable for most users. But you can see I've logged into my Playmemories application marketplace, which in order to do all this, whether you're working with an NEX camera, which will now be known as Alpha once they start launching some new models, the last one was the 5T, which was the replacement of the 5R. We still haven't gotten the update to the NEX 7 and eventually 6, but I'm sure we will see those as Alpha branded aps-c cameras. Basically, you'd have access to this by installing it on the PC, creating an account. You can do it on here as well, but obviously I recommend doing it on a PC, much easier for input, especially since no touchscreen on this or A7R, even though you may feel drawn to it since there are tabs here that make it look like it's touchscreen capable. By the way, you just saw the screen go because the sensor I have enabled for the viewfinder that will automatically turn off the screen. It's a power-saving feature, something that Sony's had since the acquisition of Konica Minolta, so that goes back quite a while now. But new applications, important because when this launched, really there were only a few. You had Smart Remote Control, which is one of the free and most useful applications by and large. I did a demo of that already in the past. You also had Direct Upload and I think Flicker. Now we've got a multiple exposure mode for $4.99, a lens compensation app for $9.99, and these are interesting applications because for those of you unfamiliar with what they do, they really do change the device, and that's why I appreciate what Sony does here. I'm going to bring you in on a tighter shot for this not of the viewfinder, but of the actual display, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about in specific detail. You can see that basically an app like this for lens compensation, it's going to let users manually select correction values for lens peripheral shading, chromatic aberration, and distortion. So this is something that isn't a gimmick, in my opinion. I mean, I haven't actually used it yet. If I get the opportunity, of course, I will. And they're showing you some samples here of performance. Not the best showroom for demonstrating it, but you can see this is an update that's applicable to all NEX cameras. You can see they're listed here thoroughly, but it's nice to see that now we finally have this in a full frame format, because that was severely missing from Sony's full frame offerings, and that's where the A7 and A7R really do bring not only the best of what Sony's come up with DI in general, from Wi-Fi, NFC, incredible performance in an incredibly light and small form factor, even though the FE lenses arguably detract from that, which I'll get to in my full review and further updates of this camera. But having the applications really is something that I had wished was incorporated. Even though they may seem like gimmicks on the surface, they really do change your device, in this case your camera, and turn it into a smarter photographic tool. Both in still and sometimes video, although Sony really hasn't taken advantage of that. I haven't seen time-lapse yet, which is disappointing. I would have liked to have seen it. I'm not sure why it hasn't made its way here, but if I go ahead and go back, not in love, by the way, with the placement of the menu button. I could be doing that with my left hand, but it's something where the menu button traditionally has been over here on the bottom right, at least the RX1. That's what I'm accustomed to currently. That is my go-to, and that's what I've been transitioning from right now. I won't say from because I haven't abandoned it. I will be revisiting the RX1 A7 comparison, since I think it is beyond a legitimate one. And more impressions I've clearly had with this. The multiple exposure, I'll jump into that quickly for all of you that want to know exactly how Sony describes it, even though it's self-explanatory. Just select a theme, and this app automatically composites your exposure with optimized settings. So here we go with some examples. And again, this is about just creativity. And some people will appreciate this, others will think it's a joke and just a way for Sony to suck more cash out of you. It's a little bit of both, frankly. In terms of all applications, you can see multiple exposure, lens compensation, the smart remote, the direct upload. Photo retouch is another one that already existed but is now here. Picture effect wasn't there before. The flicker add-on, and of course the language keyboards. Beyond that, of course, access to your own apps and settings, and that's pretty much where things are at right now. I don't believe they've populated any of my other. I'm going to check right now just in case an update happened and it's going to actually display. No, in fact it's not. So go back. I thought maybe it was going to bring up something else, but it's not. But that pretty much sums up where things are at right now with the application store for the A7 and A7R. And since that is, again, as I keep mentioning, a brand new element of the full frame business, especially for Sony, I think it's an exciting one. Certainly not for everyone, but it's one of my big draws to this camera beyond the face value of what is an incredible digital imaging tool. You know, weather sealing, audio out, multi-interface shoe that you can use pretty much any accessory. You want XLR audio, you can do it. Of course, it's going to take some really great rig action to turn this into a true video solution, but with the right FE lenses as they come out, this is already a beast even with the kit lens, although I can't really recommend a camera like this to the average user with a kit lens, because if you're willing to spend this much on a full frame experience, you're really selling yourself short even with this kit lens. And that's really still something I would argue, even though this kit lens is extraordinarily competent and produces pretty solid results, at least when it comes to a lens that's valued at probably $300 or $400, which is cheap right now, or I should say inexpensive when looking at FE branded lenses. As I've mentioned, really there aren't any out there. I mean, they're just starting to ship finally. We've got the 50 millimeter Zeiss, you've got the 35 millimeter Zeiss, the 35 millimeter Zeiss $799, the 50 you're looking at $1,000. The zoom lens, which is not out yet but should launch, I believe, first quarter of 2014, so we'll probably see that in January. I would hope a little sooner. That's, in my opinion, my favorite lens for this, even though it's only an f4 constant. I think that is probably going to be a great walk around or all the time lens for this camera for a lot of users that are looking to go entry-level A7 but want something better than this kit lens. Granted, it's going to be $1,200, which is pricey. I think that if it's your only lens, it'll be a well-vested purchase, and buyer's remorse really shouldn't be too big of an issue. But the kit lens really is all about budget, I think, at the end of the day. And if you want something right now that's going to tide you over, and use it in conjunction with your existing E-mount glass, even though it'll be cropped, if you're like me and have a power zoom 18-200, it still represents one of the best zoom offerings right now for this camera, even in the crop mode. If you switch over to something like the Sony 70-200G glass that's coming out for this, that's going to set you back an incredibly steep price tag that, at least for the time being, I would wait to see what else comes out. Granted, it's going to give you incredible image quality, I don't doubt that. Other existing glass, well, there really isn't any, and that's why I keep mentioning that outside of those few prime pieces of glass and that one Zeiss zoom lens, it's really Sony pinning everything on Zeiss right now in that one G glass lens. The roadmap is deep, but you've got to be ready to stick with this and ride it out the same way many users did with the E-mount and NEX. Keep in mind, as I've mentioned over and over again in videos, if you've come to this because you think it's the NEX 7 successor just because it has 7 in its designation, it is not. This is a full-frame camera. The NEX 7 successor will be an Alpha 7, not the Alpha 7 you're looking at here. It'll have some other designation. It could be the A7N. I'm not going to try to guess the name, but it will clearly differentiate itself from this camera because it will still be based around an aps-c size sensor, but it'll have a whole host of different feature-driven or selling points as opposed to this camera, which really is targeting the professional market and the fringe of consumers that either have enough cash or at least enough gall to take on a camera system like this, even if they aren't quite yet there. So a lot to like in the A7 and the more expensive A7R. Of course, both are different sorts of compromises, but when it comes to the lightest full-frame mirrorless interchangeable lens camera on the market, right now there's nothing else to compare it to. Leica is not a comparative or a comparable model to this or the 7R, despite the fact that it is a mirrorless interchangeable full-frame camera system. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.